let's start with the first point. So these are the 5 points, right? So this is point number 1, which is it's a test of application, not knowledge. And the best way for me to explain what GMAT is, right, is think of it this way. If I had to give you, right, let's say A4 sized page, right, with all the quant formulas, and let us say I were to let you kind of say, I'm going to let you cheat on the test, okay? I'm going to let you cheat. You are allowed to carry this formula sheet with you, okay, or in the test. Would you be able to get 51 in quant? Is it possible that you get a 51 in quant just by knowing the theory? No, right? So see, it becomes very easy when we look at it. So let me do this. Let me give you a math problem, right? Here is the rule. First is, if you know the answer, okay, don't tell, okay, don't tell, just say yes, okay? If you say yes, I will understand that you have got the answer, okay? The second thing is, don't use a paper and a pen. I'm going to give you a question, but you know, here is a hint. The hint is, don't use a paper and a pen, all right? So let's see. First of all, you know how GMAT is, right? So most of the questions involve something imaginary. So let's take this. There is a train, okay? There is a train that goes, I don't need to say it's a train. It looks like a train, so it has to be one, right? So there is a train that goes from Bangalore in India to, let's say, Mysore in India, a distance of about 120 kilometers. There is a train that is going towards Mysore, but you know how it works. Usually there is something else. So there is one more element involved, which is a bird. Okay, so the bird is also flying towards Mysore. The bird is flying at 40 kilometers per hour, and the train is going at 30 kilometers per hour. What will reach Mysore first? No points for guessing this one. This is not the question, but really it is going to be the bird. But here is what the bird does, right? In usually questions of this sort, you always have a twist. What the bird does is immediately upon touching Mysore, it starts flying towards the train. Now, the train has covered some distance. So somewhere between Bangalore and Mysore, they both meet. Then what happens? The bird flies back towards Mysore, correct? And then, because it reaches Mysore first, what does it do? It turns back, starts flying towards the train. Again, touches the train, then again reaches Mysore first. Similarly, what it does is it does this zigzag pattern till both the train and the bird reach Mysore. Let us assume that this is distance D1, this is distance D2, this is D3, this is D4, correct? What would be, you know, the summation of all the distance, or, you know, integration, because it kind of tends to 0, right? Or in other words, what is the total distance? Remember, don't give me the answer. Just tell me if you got it. Total distance traveled by the bird. And on the GMAT, you're going to have about 2 minutes. So let us see if you're able to do this. Remember, the tip here is, do not use a paper and a pen. By the way, let me just give you a sense of the time. So it's about 50 seconds into the question. Kaustubh, I hope you were able to understand that I did not ask you for the answer. So it's not a test. You could be wrong, correct? So I don't want to, you know, tell. But the thing is, those of you who are not, how many of you feel that you're stuck? After a minute, how many of you are feeling stuck? Anybody who feels, Arun, I'm stuck. Say stuck. Type stuck so that I know you're stuck. Say stuck because I don't know. Okay, got it. So many of you had said yes, Many of you are saying stuck, correct? What is the difference between getting the answer and getting stuck? By the way, those of you who are stuck, do you also realize that in some sense there is a kind of pressure that builds into your head? Like even 30 seconds, you're not able to make progress. Do you realize that your brain also starts to panic? Okay. So what is it that people who are able to solve this question knew that people who did not solve this question? By the way, that's about 2 minutes. On the GMAT, that's all you have. Okay. Anybody feels, Arun, I need 30 seconds and I'll be able to solve it? Those who are still stuck, is there anyone who feels a little bit more time and I'll be able to solve it? Anybody feels that way? Like, just give me some more time. All right. So here is the deal. This is not a question where more time will help you. See, if you have calculated D1 and you're calculating D2, you're calculating D3 and D4 and D5 and so on, you very clearly are on the wrong path, correct? So what is the magic formula that people who could solve this question knew that people who did not solve this question did not know? This is a magic formula. I hope you understand this is a secret formula that not many people know that is required to solve this question, right? And I hope I usually get people to sign an NDA before I give this formula, but you guys are good, so I'm going to let you know. So the formula is equal to speed is equal to distance upon time. So that's a joke. So how many of you say, I know this formula. I know speed is equal to distance. What's the big deal? Are you telling me that this entire question can be solved using just this formula? Yes. Why? Because if speed is equal to distance upon time, then distance is equal to speed into time. Correct? What do we need to find? The distance of the bird, which is the speed of the bird into the time taken by the bird. Correct? Now think about it. What is the speed of the bird? The speed of the bird is 40 kilometers per hour. What was the time taken by the bird? Look at how long would it take for the train to reach Mysore, because the bird is going to fly for as long the train and the bird reach Mysore together, right? So at 120 for 120 kilometers at 30 kilometers per hour, the train is going to take 4 hours, which means the bird is going to fly for 4 hours, which means the total distance is 160 kilometers. Now, even if you got this question, okay, I hope, are you able to realize why people could not have got this question? Those who got it, this is for them. Were you able to kind of get why people who did not get it could not have solved? Yeah. And those who did not solve, how many of you felt at the back of your head, I have not done time, speed, distance, or there might be a formula that I'm not done? How many of you, in that sense, mentally justified that as your reason? Anybody did that? You know, we tend to mentally justify, right? Quant is not good here. I have not practiced. Maybe it's okay. But a lot of GMAT, I tell you, the amount of theory tested on the GMAT is fairly finite. By the way, did all of you get this? Why it's 160? Yeah. Yeah. So just go ahead and let me know in the chat window. All of you got what I'm trying to say here of why this question and why I'm giving this, because this is GMAT for you, correct? This cannot be fixed by you going back to R.S. Agarwal or any quant book which is going to give you just maths problems, right? By doing 100 problems where length is equal to 5, breadth is equal to 4, what is the area of rectangle is not going to help you get a 51 in quant, correct? So that would be really my first thing, that GMAT is a test of application. It's not a test of knowledge. Trust me, whatever I told you in quant, the same thing is applicable in verbal, correct? Same thing is applicable in verbal. The amount of knowledge required for you to do well on the GMAT is very, very finite. Tell me something, what does Harvard Business School look for in a potential candidate? Think about it. What does Harvard Business School look for? Does it look for someone who knows all the rules of grammar? Do you think that's a value that GMAT would want to kind of value? Correct? See, what happens is we tend to mistake GMAT with various other tests. Correct? Just to give you an example of how it happens in India, right? A lot of tests in India are based on your knowledge and not on application. For example, if I were to go back to, let's say, something like many of the bank PO exams, correct? It's based on knowledge. You know it, you apply it in a formula tediously, you'll get to the answer, but not on the GMAT, correct? So a lot about GMAT is knowing the how and the why, right? So you need to have techniques to help you succeed on the GMAT. And these are techniques that you can apply on the actual test. So going back to what I said, so one of the biggest difference between this is, if you ask me, there are three things that people who do well on the GMAT have. Okay. So the first thing is, I'm going to talk about this shortly, but there is still theory. But as I said, along with theory, there is also application of that theory. And finally, you have strategy. Now, what you need to understand is you can't be looking at strategy if your theory is not in place. You can't be looking at application if theory is not in place. You can't definitely look at strategy if the other two are not in place, correct? So you have to build one on top of the other, correct? That's really what GMAT to a large extent does, right? So if you ask me, since we are on this topic of theory, correct? The theory required on the GMAT is fairly limited. Would all of you like to solve an actual GMAT question? Yeah. Would you like to solve an actual GMAT question? Yeah. So I'm going to give you an actual GMAT question, right? Based on sentence correction. But here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you what is the rule that is going to be tested. Okay. And here is how I'm going to put this rule. The students, the teacher, very clearly, all of you know this one, right? The students is studying. You say, no, Arun, it's not studying, it's are studying. Why? Because a plural subject needs to have a plural verb. A singular subject needs to have a singular verb. Now, think about it. It's a fairly easy concept. Are all of you clear on this concept? That's it. Very simple subject verb agreement. Okay. Now, one of the things that happens is once you understand that it's a test of knowledge or it's a test of application, what you also need to know is it's a test of very specific skills. Correct? What is this skill? What is the skill required? Okay. So all of you understand sentence correction. So what happens in sentence correction? You are given a sentence, part of it is underlined. You are given 4 other answer options and you are asked which among the 5 answer options is the best one, correct? Right? Now, what specific skill, for example, by the way, just a quick question. Just wanted to know how many, by the way, so sorry, I'll just, yeah, just wanted to check how many of you are CrackVerbal students, because if you're CrackVerbal students, you probably understand what I'm trying to say. This could be slightly redundant for you. So because we are already going through a lot of this in the course itself, right? So this is actually a session. This was a webinar meant for people who are not aware of CrackVerbal or what we do. So it's more for them. But since a lot of students insisted that we should send them the link, if you were to really ask me, if you're a CrackVerbal student, we go through a lot more depth in the course. Okay, so this may not, but it's a good refresher for you to kind of keep in mind, right? So one thing that you know that I keep telling in sentence correction, right? What is that skill? GMAT SE is a test of elimination, not selection, correct? So it's a test of elimination, not selection, right? So that's one of the key things for us to kind of also keep in mind, right? That end of the day, what really matters is not whether we know what the right question looks like, but for us to know what the wrong question, how would it look, right? So that's what we need to do. So we also have a question. So I'm just going to give you a question with like 5 answer choices. But as I see, majority of you CrackVerbal students should be able to get this out of the ballpark, hit this out of the ballpark. Okay. So yeah, so let me just check. Okay. So let's do this. Let's take this question, okay, sentence correction question, and I'm going to give you roughly 2 minutes, which is the time that it takes for you to solve a sentence correction question. About a minute and a half, this is how long you have on the GMAT to solve this question. So go ahead and let me know your response. Lot of fence sitters, but why don't you just go ahead and pick in your answers. I'm going to count down to 3. At this point, if you're not able to solve it, trust me, you don't have either the skills to solve it, or you might have missed out something. So go ahead and make a guess. 3, 2, 1, and done. Okay. By the way, I didn't want you to put it in the chat window. Just go ahead and put it in the poll. So I see the answer is corrupted by a lot of our CrackVerbal students who are getting the right answer. It is indeed E. Okay. So now tell me, from a skills perspective, okay, from a skills perspective, it is the same skills that I taught you over here. The same skills are required for you to solve this question. This is it. Singular subject, singular verb, plural subject, plural verb. But look at what GMAT is doing. GMAT is confusing the hell out of you by giving you this extra data, right? Unlike most other mergers in the industry, which have been driven by the need, blah, 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 blah. Do you realize all of this is actually not required for you? For you to get to the answer, you need to start it over here. The merger of the nation's LPG and petroleum company. So now tell me, the merger of the nation's LPG and petroleum company, what is the subject? Like we have over here, students and teacher, like that, what is the subject over here? Is it merger or LPG petrol? What is it? It has to be merger, correct? All of you were able to figure out. Anybody who was not able to figure out that it's not merger, because the moment you know it's merger, it's a singular, it has to be is, cannot be R, B, C, and D go off, correct? In under 30 seconds, if you are able to kind of know how to go about it. So as I said, I'm not even trying to look at what the right answer choice is, right? I just used the rule. I eliminated 3 other answer options. That leaves me with answer option A and D. The merger of the nation's LPG and petroleum company, the merger of the nation's LPG company and leading petroleum company, correct? And the example, those of you who have been in my class know that the example that I give is this, ONGC. Okay, can I say, ONGC are great companies? Because it says oil and natural gas company. Oil and natural gas company, singular or plural? It is not companies, right? It is not R, it is, because this is one company. Look at answer option A. It says the merger of the nation's LPG and petroleum company. When you have a merger, it is usually with 2 companies, correct? Whereas in answer option A, there is just one company, which is nation's LPG, and it is similar to saying oil and natural gas company. LPG and petroleum company, it's one company, right? For that reason, you're left with E for echo, which clearly says the merger. So for example, if I were to say, the chairman and managing director, correct? You actually have one person over here. The chairman and managing director was invited. Why? Because you have one person, one entity. But when I say the chairman, right, and the managing director, when I say the chairman and the managing director, what we are looking at over here is we are looking at two people. So what would we say? Are, correct? Now, why I wanted to give you this example is because end of the day, if you think about it, what GMAT is really testing you on is a very specific skill. Your ability to make educated guesses, your mental ability to wrap the sentence in your head and doing it in under 2 minutes. Which is why I want you to think of it this way, that GMAT is not a test of English and maths. Right? There are plenty of people who can perhaps teach better English than me. That's not my claim. By the way, my students know this. I do not have a master's in English literature. I don't have a PhD, right? But still, would you be okay learning GMAT from me? Sure, because that's one claim that I have, which is I can solve GMAT questions, right? And that's the whole idea that I think a lot of times people end up missing out on, that there are specific skills that you need to create, and these are skills across areas, right? Not just sentence correction. What I showed you was an example of sentence correction, but same thing for reading comprehension and critical reasoning, right? So that's point number 2. Point number 3, how many of you know that your GMAT score matters even after your MBA? Do you know that? Do you know consulting companies, sometimes private equity, venture capital firms, they actually look at your GMAT scores? Yeah, so that's the interesting bit, they do. Now, question to you, why do you think they look at your GMAT score? Why do you think it's important for them to look at your GMAT score? I mean, why? Have you thought about it? What do you think would be the reason? Well, one of the reasons that people tend to look at your GMAT scores is because GMAT is really testing you on real world skills. Okay, the reason why employers look at GMAT is testing you on real world skills. What are the real world skills that you are expected to have, right, at your workplace? So the first is you are expected to read a lot. Any job that you're going in, those of you who say, I don't like reading, please, an MBA is not for you, correct? By the way, Anand, I just gave you an example of private equity or consulting. My bigger point is that the skills that you learn while you are studying for the GMAT are real world skills. When I teach reading comprehension, correct, what I really teach you is how to read a lot and distill it so that if you have any questions, you should be able to find answers. Just imagine your boss, let's say you're in manufacturing, correct? And your boss says, well, I would like to know how the COVID epidemic is impacting our supply chain. Okay, is that a valid thing that you would need to research on post MBA? Possibly, correct? So now what you do is you go and start reading about COVID, right? And that is just way too much information. So what is it that we are supposed to do? We are supposed to read only enough for us to get a sense of supply chain in our geography, correct? And you can't go back to your boss and say, hey, I read like 15 articles. Your boss is going to say, hey, give me the gist, right? That's exactly what we learn in reading comprehension, correct? But that's not all, correct? You are also expected to critique what you're writing. You're expected to analyze the assumptions. What are the conjectures? What can you draw, right? So you are actually expected to not take the written word as it is, but to apply your lens of logic. Okay, in any data that you read, GMAT will say, please see what is the assumption over here. Okay, so qualities like assumptions, inference are things that you will carry on to your workplace And more importantly, you also need to be able to present your thoughts. Correct? You need to be presenting your thoughts in a concise and clear manner. What is this? This is nothing but sentence correction. Harvard Business School does not want your high school grammar teacher. Correct? It wants someone who can write clear English, because tomorrow if you are in a job, right, and if you are going to be writing something that says merger of this and it causes confusion, right? Just imagine the board is reading a report that you have created, right, and it has erroneous English. Do you realize the problem? So GMAT is kind of creating that filter, right? And finally, what you are also expected to do is you are also expected in some sense use your quantitative skills. This is not the same as picking up your calculator and crunching in numbers. The biggest mistake that people make is they think that just because they have an engineering degree, they are great in quant, right? Not true, right? Because quant is a very different skill. So that's what you need to do. So what I'm really saying is all of these are real world skills. I have had students who have taken the GMAT and said, Arun, for me, okay, the GMAT is actually helped me deal with my boss. One of my students, Neha, she went to INSEAD. She was for TCS for about 5 years. She went to INSEAD. She worked in BCG. Now she's in Microsoft. So she told me that while she was at BCG, her boss was a grammar Nazi. And she would say every report that I wrote, I would worry about the modifiers and the subject verb and the pronouns. So these are real world skills that we are learning, correct? So try to enjoy the test. Try to think you are upgrading yourself. Okay. Now, let me give you a sample. How many of you want to be an entrepreneur? I will give you an example of how GMAT tests you on real world skills. Okay. How many of you want to be an entrepreneur? How many of you want to work in a startup? Maybe not be an entrepreneur, but work in a startup. And how many of you want to be potentially at some point in your life a venture capitalist, someone who's maybe funding other startups, correct? Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick question, right? And I'm going to give you 2 minutes because that's really how much you have on the GMAT to study, right? To solve a question. Okay, so 2 minutes. Here is the question coming up for you. All right, 2 minutes over on the GMAT. That's how long you would have for this question, okay? Remember. So why don't you just go ahead and type in your answers? Great, a lot of you seem to be getting it right. I'm just going to end the poll now and let's see what you guys have done. So most of you just go ahead, and if you're not marked it, just go ahead and click your answer. Just go ahead. If you're not sure, pick any of the 5 answer choices. That's okay, right? Anything that you think is interesting, right? So why don't you just go ahead? I'm going to give you the last 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and done. Okay, so great. Let's look at what we have over here. So the other thing is that, when you look at questions like this, you need to ask yourself, what is it that is the task? Look at it. It says, clearly, therefore, if there is no need, so it says 2 things. The theaters are only large enough for a profitability now, number 1. Number 2, the country's population is not expected to increase over the next 10 years. Correct? Now, tell me, why would you want to invest in a business? Because what it says is Lightbox is unlikely to be profitable. Okay? You are saying we should weaken this argument. If it weakens the argument, what are you going to say? You are going to say Lightbox is profitable, correct? That's what you're really saying. Lightbox is profitable. You are a VC, you have invested in Dunzo, right? People are telling you Dunzo is not profitable. You're saying, no, it will be profitable. Or you are maybe an Amazon, you are Jeff Bezos. People are saying that it's not profitable. And you are saying, no, it will be profitable. So question to you, if you are a VC, why would you invest in Lightbox Incorporated? Think about it. Okay. The only reason that you would want to invest in what is currently loss making, what is loss making, why would you want to invest in it? You want to invest in it because you feel that in the future you will turn profitable, correct? And one way in which all venture capitalists bet on any company is when they see that it will change human behavior. Do you know Kellogg, the cornflake company? Not the B school, Kellogg's, right? Do you know that it takes 20 years for them, when they launch in a country, for them to change breakfast habits? In India, you could have paratha or poha or idli or dosa, or I don't know what they have in Ecuador, by the way. Would be interested to know that. But whatever you have for breakfast, what are we having now? We are having cereals, right? We are having cornflakes with milk, right? Because it's just easy, it's convenient, right? 20 years ago, people did not think that way. People today are thinking that way. Why? Because look at the right answer choice A. Though little change in the size of population is expected, a pronounced shift towards a younger, more affluent, and more entertainment-oriented population is expected to occur. If you are a VC, answer option A is why you are investing in any company, correct? That you are hoping that the future is going to be better than what it is today because people are going to change behavior. Now, do you realize why I'm saying that GMAT, why consulting companies and some companies look for your GMAT score, right? Because it is a reflection of how clearly you are able to think. And these are really the skills that we are learning from GMAT. Right? We are not learning English and maths. Anyone who's telling you it's a test of English and maths is feeding you the wrong thing. Right? All right. Now, coming to the fourth point, right? That was my third point. Coming to my fourth point, GMAT is a marathon because, see, anything that is going to take 3 to 4 months of your life, right, of dedicated practice, according to me, is a marathon. Do you agree? See, when was the last time that you studied for anything for 3 to 4 months? Not even in college. Not even in college. College, I guarantee that you guys probably studied a week before the exam. Maybe some of you were the diligent kinds who studied the whole semester, correct? But if you are like me, you probably studied for a couple of days before the test. You mugged up a bunch of things and you had to do it. Here's the other thing. How many of you over here, right, feel that, Arun, the last time that I studied for anything was in college. And the only job that I had in college was to study. Correct? There is no other expectation from you. You're not supposed to go to work. You're not supposed to commute. You're not supposed to do this. The only thing that you're supposed to do the whole day is study. Correct? And, what happens now? We have so many commitments, right? So if I were to look at it, we already have things, right? So the primary spheres that we have, okay, so you spend time on yourself, you spend time on work, and you spend time on relationships. If you really think about it, these are the three primary areas of your life where you're spending your time. Okay, just try to create a mental thing of what are the things that you did yesterday, correct? You will realize that most of what you did, right, maybe you exercised, great. That is time that you spent on yourself. You attended a call, that is time spent on work. And you may have, spent time with your friend, with your talking to someone, on relationships, correct? Now, how many of you feel that in this whole lockdown, this whole work from home, lockdown, right? How many of you feel that actually what is happening is this is getting squeezed? The U is getting squeezed. Do you feel that way? And it just seems that work and relationships seem to take up more time than the time that you spend for yourself. How many of you feel that way? Can you let me know in the chat window? Yeah. Correct? Household work, see, household work, according to me, comes in relationships in some sense, right? Because if you were to be by yourself, I'm pretty sure that maybe we don't really, we live like, we live without a lot of hygiene, but it's just that sometimes we live and we have our chores, so we need to do, correct? So here is a food for thought for all of you, okay? And this is something that I read on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, okay? And it really stuck me, it really hit me. And this is what it said. It said that during the lockdown, okay, during this lockdown, if you have not been able to, learn a new skill, okay, pursue a hobby, or focus on your health. If you have not been able to do this, it means you do not, it is not a question of time. It's a question of discipline. All this while we have been, in some sense, complaining about lack of time, right? But in reality, if you ask me, it is about discipline. How many of you agree? That yeah, now you don't have commute, now you have flexibility on your schedule, now you can do everything you want. I agree that January 1st, pre-COVID days, you had all of this, right? But what is happening is, if you're not going to be able to take care of you, trust me, your relationships and work will also suffer, correct? You have to take care of yourself, and you have to invest in yourself. That's the key to doing well in life in general, okay? I'm not talking about GMAT, I'm talking about in life in general. So what happens, GMAT suddenly comes and, it becomes this thing that a lot of us struggle to, work with, right? But really, if you ask me, what is GMAT really testing you on? I would say it is testing also your ability to adapt. Do you agree? It tests your ability to plan. It's testing your ability to stay focused. And I will tell you something that I heard from a B school admission committee. Okay, so this is someone who was in the B school admission committee, and I asked him about GMAT scores, and I told this. And here is something that he said, which was again very interesting. He said, Arun, GMAT, we are actually testing two things. Correct. First is, with regards to your smartness. This is what I told earlier, correct? That how smart are you? But what he said, the second thing also kind of, made me think. He said, Arun, we want people who can come and who are not just smart, but who are also dedicated, who are also able to focus. Right? We see that a lot of people today are not able to focus. Okay. And here is a quote for you. Do you know who said this? Busy is the new stupid. Being busy is actually the new stupid. Correct? Do you know who said this? Bill Gates, right? There is actually a video of Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, having a conversation on YouTube. You can look it up, right? So if we keep complaining that we don't have time, trust me, the world is not going to come and say, oh, you don't have time. We understand how you're busy. Nobody cares, right? And as you're going to be working in the corporate life, what you will realize is that there is going to be more chaos. There is going to be more things for you to read and consume. You're always going to have 24 hours a day, correct? How well you're able to manage is also a skill that GMAT is testing you on, correct? So that's something that I want you to think, that look, if you're struggling to prepare for the GMAT, maybe there is something that is bigger at stake over here, correct? And a couple of tips that I can offer is, first of all, remember, we don't live in an ideal world, correct? See, I think a lot of times what happens is we tend to have this picture of perfection, right? In our picture of perfection, how many hours are we expected to study? We are expected to study 2 hours every day, right? Or 3 hours every day, correct? We are supposed to do that for 6 days a week. You're kidding me. It's not possible, right? As I told you, that there are going to be other factors that will take up your time. Please don't live in an ideal world, correct? So you are going to be spending time doing other things. My take is to adjust to what you already have as your constraints. And the second thing over here is, please Befriend your brain. See, there are very simple ways in which you can actually make studying a habit. In fact, those of you who have taken the course, how many of you have seen the module, How to Study for the GMAT, right? Have you seen that module? What did you learn? Any tips that you can share in the chat window of what you learned from that module? Because I'm going to share one tip with you, okay? The tip with that is that if you like something, right, that is the only way you can actually do it consistently. Do you agree? If you don't like something, you will not do it. Have you ever struggled, okay? Have you ever struggled to binge watch your favorite series on Netflix? Have you struggled? Arun, every time, it says 5 seconds, it says, next, episode starting, and I struggle to click on the play button, or I struggle to do nothing. No, we don't have that problem, because what we enjoy, we like to do. So the best thing for us is to see how do we enjoy studying for the GMAT. Okay, how do we enjoy studying for the GMAT? And one way to do that is, remember that things that you like, what your brain does is it secretes this thing called dopamine. Okay, so this is my very weird interpretation of the brain, the human brain. Okay, so the brain secretes dopamine whenever it enjoys something. Correct? What you can do is pick an activity which is already doing dopamine secretion. What you do is take GMAT prep and you piggyback that on the activity that you already like doing. What I mean by that is, let me give you an example. So I always like to put on deo after I shower. I generally do that, correct? I just like doing it. I mean, I don't know, I just do it as a habit, correct? So now this is a habit for me. A long time, what happened is I struggled to take my vitamin pills. Right? Vitamin pills are not painkillers, right? Like painkiller I will take because, obviously I need it. But vitamin, multivitamin, is that okay, let me take it. But I just struggled, I would always forget. So what I started doing is I started keeping my vitamin pills, right, just next to where I keep my deo, right? So all I had to do is just before I put on my deo, which I knew was a habit that I followed every day, all I needed to do was I needed to start taking my vitamin pills. So it becomes a lot easier because you have one habit that you're doing every day. You just kind of, piggyback this habit, right? Because the dopamine secretion now starts happening even when you take the vitamin pill. It's weird, right? How the brain works, but that's really how the brain works. In fact, you can actually Google for habit trackers. There are habit trackers which actually let you do that. So what it does is it basically says if there is a chain, let's say this is the calendar, and let's say there is a chain, right? The human brain automatically does not want to break the chain, correct? So you want to kind of keep doing that consistently, right? So that's really what I want. And the key to that is to set goals. If you do not have a goal, the brain works on deadlines. Would all of you agree on this? Like if you have a structure, right, your brain works a lot differently, which is why it is very important that you set goals and, stay focused. But at the same time, I'm not expecting you to study for, 8-10 hours a day. I think it's possible, right? You can study only for about a couple of hours a day, max, right? So take breaks, study for a couple of hours, right? And going on that topic, on setting the goal, by the way, CrackVerbal students, it's about 11. So in case you have a class at 12, just wanting to warn you, don't worry about me. I'll be taking the class. But how to approach the GMAT the right way. So over here, I just wanted to talk about three things. Okay. This is the last point that I have. Okay. The three things. First is know how much time you have, right? This is what I feel, people tend to need to understand this equation, correct? Which is your equation of score versus time. How many of you feel this is a graph like this? Do you think with more time your scores will keep increasing? No, right? So what you have is something that is going to go like this, right? So what is important, Gokul, I am the faculty over here, so I wouldn't know. Please reach out to the concerned person at CrackVerbal. They would be able to help you. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to know the exact point where you are going to start getting diminishing returns. What is diminishing returns? Diminishing returns means more effort is not going to get you commensurate scores. Okay. Which means even if this is a 680, you have to be happy with it. Correct. So the key is for us to figure out this part, right? And if you ask me, about 3 to 4 months with about 1 to 2 hours of prep, or let me just make it a slightly more this. So 2 hours of prep, about 5 days a week for about 3 to 4 months. Correct? That's really the magic formula. Obviously, a lot of you are going to take less time. Many of you could take more time, but this is a thumb rule. Because what happens a lot of times, people come and ask me, can I get 720 in 2 minutes? Can I? See, the point is, I do not know. I don't know, right? Because at some point, you are the best judge of when you are going to be hitting this spot. This is the max potential that you're going to have. Very important that A, we reach our max potential. B, we also know more time will not help. Let me ask you this question. How many of you want to walk out with an 800 on the GMAT? And how many of you want to walk out saying, you know what, Arun, I'm okay if I walk out of the test center and I tell myself, look, I couldn't have done better. Anybody feels that way? That I couldn't have done better. Like, I mean, this is it. If I walk out of the test center having that feeling, I would be more than glad. Correct? So, yeah, so that's, I think, the key for you to remember that don't keep it as a question of time. Ask yourself whether, this is something that, you would want to really, whether it's worth investing more time. Correct? Second is make sure that you have the right resources. If you ask me, the resources I could broadly split into 3 categories. First is what I would call as the prep resource. Then I would say practice resource. And then I would say the test resource, right? So the first thing is you need to have prep, which teaches you the concept and application. Okay. Obviously, at CrackVerbal, Arvind takes quant, I take verbal. I believe that the way we teach the concept and applications, and students who have been part of the course realize that we believe in logic rather than theory. In fact, before every class, what is that one question I ask myself? Right? I ask myself that a student is investing 2 hours of his life listening to me. Like, for example, today you have invested about an hour of your life listening to me. So my question is, can I bring value, right? Is this something that he can pick up from a book? Is this something that he can read somewhere? Why does Arun need to come and tell this to them, right? So I think, it's very important that we understand that we pick the right resources, because see, there is a problem of plenty on the GMAT. Do you agree? There is way too much theory out there, right? Floating in the market. You don't need all of it. You're not here to study to be an English teacher. You're here to do well on the GMAT, score high, and get this whole damn thing out of your way, right? So make sure that your prep is essentially what you need to success. Don't get it confused with quant and verbal. Practice, if I were to give you one advice, which is practice only official material. There is a very good reason in the course. I will tell you why practicing the official material, such as the official guide or the verbal review or the quant review, is important. But that would be my second piece of advice. And thirdly, take tests to kind of gauge your progress, because it is not just how you're going to do it. You also need the strategies to kind of give you that boost on the day of the GMAT. I can give you strategies, right, that can be a difference of easily 40 to 50 points. Let's assume there are two people who know the same amount of theory. I can give you strategies that could be a difference between, let's say, a 710 and a 760, correct? But again, remember, strategies come only after you've mastered the theory and the application, correct? So in terms of material, I would say, first of all, the official guide is your go-to. You have currently the OG 2021 version, right? So my suggestion is any previous version, doesn't matter, 2018, 2019, they just rehash the questions. So don't worry, pick a copy of the OG. We also give 5 mock tests as part of the course, but along with that, there are free mock tests available on MBA.com. So there is about 5 over here. There is 2 free. Plus, you also get about 4 paid, correct? So this is approximately $89 that you can buy on MBA.com, right? So all of this put together is all you need on the GMAT. Really, the amount of material that you're going to do is very finite. Please don't get drowned in the material that you get on places like GMAT, right? You have enough stuff to download to last you till 2022. The problem is not of getting material. The problem is getting the right one and knowing which one to choose. And the last point that I have is have a concrete study plan and you need to follow it. See, we like working well in a situation where we are told what to do, right? So every day morning, if you're told what to do, I think life becomes a lot more easier than for us to second guess whether, you know, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. How many of you have started studying, taken out the book, started with the right intention, but spent the next 30 minutes trying to analyze what topic to study, where to study from, how to study, and before you realize that 30 minutes makes you exhausted, you basically then take a break, you start checking WhatsApp, Instagram, and before you realize your prep session got screwed. How many of you feel you have had days like that? Let me know in the chat window. Yeah. So you all have had days, right? So that's one of the things that we need to understand, that look, at the end of the day, apart from all of this, very important that we have a structure, and this is where you know, CrackVerbal, especially with the live online course, I'm just giving you an example of how we bring such a structure. So there are 2 parts to your whole journey. So the next 3 to 4 months, there are 2 things that you're going to be doing. First thing is you're going to learn about GMAT and more importantly, the MBA application process. If I were to understand this very clearly, all of you here are not just to take the GMAT so that you can score high and put it up on your fireplace so that you can tell your grandchildren how great you are on GMAT. That's not the reason, correct? The reason you are studying for the GMAT is because you want to get into a B school, right? So very important that you understand what are the things that you require on your MBA prep, okay? And the second thing that you need to do is utilize this. Studying for the GMAT is like a root canal operation. You want to do it once, you want to do it right, and you want to get it out of the way, correct? That's the whole thing. So here is what we do in the live classes. So anybody who's been as part of the live class know that we go depth, okay? We go depth in any concept. For example, if you take verbal, right? Sentence correction, what we will do itself, we'll have 7 sessions. So the way it works is we have the session on the weekends. And what I'm going to do is during the weekday, I will give you practice. So let us say we did subject verb and let's say we did pronouns, correct? So during the weekday, either from the CrackVerbal testing platform or you know, from OG, you are expected to solve questions. So what happens is your homework is related to what you have studied on the weekend. According to me, any sport that you play, let's take any sport or take any musical instrument, correct? You realize that we always go depth For example, if you've played a musical instrument, you want to master a particular tune before you learn the next tune, correct? Similarly, if you're playing, let's say, tennis, you want to master forehand before you start taking backhand, correct? So what the coach will do is he will make you practice the whole day just one stroke. Why? Because that's how we learn. The mistake that people do, they just go into this and they start learning all over the place. Today I like sentence correction, tomorrow I like CR, third day I'll take one, fourth day. It's like a mess, correct? But what we need to do, pick things on weekends, study that on weekday, right? So we have about 7 sessions for sentence correction, 5 sessions for critical reasoning, and about 6 sessions for reading comprehension. Actually, we also have some advanced sessions, some practice sessions over here. If you look at quant, these are the topics that we need to do. Start with arithmetic. People think arithmetic is easy, but trust me, there are some word problems on the GMAT where it can get super tricky. Yeah, I will show you a real tough 50-51 question. It is never to do with formulas. We think we are good with arithmetic because we know formula. If you see the way Arvind approaches number systems, correct? Very important that we cannot get that. There is also this topic that most of us hate. Okay, I don't know why we have this morbid fear of permutation, combination, probability, but that's been one area where I feel most people end up having problems, right? So what I think is it's important for us to get the conceptual clarity. If you think of permutation, combination as a counting system, it is just a way to count, okay? You will get that conceptual clarity. Apart from that, we have algebra. So within algebra, there is, there is the usual, equations, linear, quadratic equations, but you also have 2 other dreaded areas, inequalities and absolute values, correct? Very important concepts on the GMAT, especially when they come in data sufficiency, correct? When you have inequalities questions coming in data sufficiency, it can get super tricky. The thing with geometry is you get only 3 to 4 questions. Okay, just to give you a sense, you get 7 to 8 questions in almost all the concepts. Okay, in fact, 8 to 9 questions in all the concepts, right? But no, sorry, 7 to 8. The number was 7 to 8. So 7 to 8 questions in all of these, right? And about 3 to 4 questions in geometry, right? But the problem with geometry is you still need to know a lot of theory. You can't do polygons or circles or lines without knowing the basic formulas. So there is a lot over there, but there is one area that a lot of people fear, which is coordinate geometry. You remember slope, y is equal to mx plus c, right? So all of that we're going to be revisiting, but in a very interesting fashion. Okay, and the other thing that I one of the beauties or one of the advantages of working with CrackVerbal is I am also an MBA coach. I've been working with candidates who have gotten into top schools, and trust me, I charge a lot. Okay, in terms of the consulting fees because my time is what they take. But the good thing is I'm going to tell you everything. What is also included in part of the GMAT flow is my MBA advice, correct? So I'll be taking a session on MBA strategy. I think some of you have attended it, correct? Where I give you a framework that you can use, a framework that I usually give my clients to pay, for my application this, but, I'm just saying that you get all of that for free because you are not studying for the GMAT. You are applying to a B school, right? It's not just studying for the GMAT, right? I think in case you're interested to sign up for the GMAT at home, in case you're not a student, in case you're interested to sign up for the program, please go ahead and let me know. Rachel will be sharing the link in the chat window. So Rachel, you can just, So that's really if you want to know about our live at home program. We have a lot of students right now. So just a quick note from students who have been attending the program. I just wanted you guys to, so how has it been going for you? I think it's also a good time for me to kind of hear some this. You have been attending my classes, right? So on weekend, you have a rigor that 12 to 2 or 3 to 5, you're sitting, going through the sessions. Then during the week, you go, you practice. We also have sessions during the weekday on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We have quant and verbal. We have quant on Wednesdays and verbal on Thursdays. Many of you have been attending that as well, right? So how is it going for those who are attending the classes? Great, great. So some of you have started with quant, yet to start with verbal. Great. So just on that note, I just wanted to let you know that the GMAT centers are going to reopen very soon. They have already started taking the booking. I think it's a question of when they're going to open up. We don't know yet, but my guess is at least in places like Bangalore, it's going to start around the first week of April. So, sorry, first week of June, right? First week of April is when it got shut. So, first week of June, and please look out for the date. My suggestion would not be to worry too much about the GMAT online, right? So, that's all I have, guys. I see that there are no other questions that I have. I hope this session was useful. I wanted to give you an overview of what the GMAT is all about. The actual centers at the test will not have the whiteboard, right? So this will be like what you would have done earlier, which is you will get a scratch pad and a pen, correct? But yeah, the slots are open. I think you can book the test dates as well. Okay, please do follow us. You know, on YouTube we release a lot of content. So make sure that you follow us. In case you're on Instagram, we have live sessions, live Insta live sessions with students who are, studying in, the schools, and we try to get them to come and speak about what's life in the school, right? So if there are no other questions, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming up on a nice Saturday morning and joining me for this session, right? All right. This is the reason why you join CrackVerbal, according to me, is not because you want to learn theory, but I think, we also want to streamline your prep. So if there is any questions that you have, any feedback that you have, please let us know. Would be glad to hear. Yeah. So you can always write to me, arunj@crackverbal.com. Okay. So thank you for your time. I don't see any other questions. So I guess no other questions, right? Thank you so much for. See, what happens with self-study, doing self-study first and then joining a course is the problem is we have only 3-4 months, correct? See, what happens when people come to me after wasting many months, right, studying for the GMAT is that, to be honest, this is the problem, correct? If you want to take professional help, right, my suggestion would be to take professional help early on, because many a times what is easier is for us to learn something for the first time. It's always easier for us to unlearn anything that we have learned incorrectly and relearn the right one. There is a lot of friction, there is a lot of dissipation of energy that happens when you go back and forth. So it is better for you to start with the right note rather than for you to make course correction later on. But if you were to take the diagnostic test, score well, you can study for a month by yourself and take the GMAT, please do so. But as a recommendation, it's not just CrackVerbal course, any course you join. My take is if you're anyways going to invest money in that course, you rather do it early and get the maximum out of it rather than struggling doing self-prep. That's what my advice would be. Okay, so thanks a lot and all the best.